I made a homemade scope mount for my M91 30. This is a long eye relief scope. I paid about $30 for it off the internet, and it's made, these clamps are made to slide onto where the rear leaf sight attaches, but my rear leaf sight, I believe, is soldered on, and rather than desolder it, I decided to make a scope mount so I can still use my iron sights and I can use my scope. So it's kind of a trick, but these are 4mm screws, and I drilled them, had to drill them in exactly the right spot. And then I drilled a hole here and then made 2 cuts so that my rear sight adjustment will still slide up to the 800-meter position, as if that's ever going to be necessary, but I can. And then I welded a piece of a 1-inch steel with 4 holes drilled in it, and these 4 holes are for, I think it's a Mossberg scope mount. I bought the scope mount at Walmart and just put the screws in a straight line and tapped them and put them in. I've floated the barrel on this rifle. I've seen on other people's websites they said the Russians used things like leather, but where am I going to get a thin leather strip to float the barrel? And I realized rubberized gasket material that you make gaskets for cars would be just about the perfect material, because it's a 32nd of an inch thick and water and oil will not bother it, and neither will heat. So I made 2 of them. One goes in the back here, so I raised the barrel and receiver up a 32nd of an inch, and then a second one that goes behind the recoil lug. So that's all there is to these shims. The trigger on this rifle has a really long trigger pull, probably like 3/8 of an inch, which is pretty typical, I think, for these rifles. But it was a little bit gravelly, and what I figured out was the trigger does not go straight through the trigger guard. It goes a little bit sideways, and the trigger would drag on one side of the trigger guard as I was pulling the trigger. So I polished it up so it feels real smooth now. And the trick was to sand this left and right. I tried sanding up and down first to smooth it off, and that was a mistake. It didn't get any better, but once I sanded it left and right so the grooves and scratches are the same direction as the trigger pull, it made the trigger much smoother. In order to float well, I can't completely float the barrel. The wood handguard and stock have to touch the front of the barrel somewhere, but in order to control exactly where the barrel touches, I put some rubber O-rings around the barrel. I got these from Ace Hardware. I think they're 15mm inside diameter and 1.5mm outside diameter. I would really like, they're 1.5 millimeters thick. I would really like 1mm O-rings, but these are the thinnest ones I could find. But this will make sure that the barrel doesn't touch the wood except for where we floated the barrel with the shims, and right here at the end where these O-rings are going to touch. I modified the front sight because the front sight was a little bit too short. So I found that 12 gauge electrical wire is exactly the same diameter as the post. So I took a piece that was 2 or 3 millimeters long, and I soldered it right on top of the post. Then I filed it down at the range with the file so it was exactly the right height at 75 yards. And once I got it at home, I put some black nail polish on it, and you really can't even tell that the front sight's been modified. So in order to make sure that the recoil lug absorbs the recoil of this rifle properly, we want to tighten this screw first while pushing down very hard on the top of the barrel. So I'm going to push down up here to preload the recoil lug, and then I'll tighten the screw up as I'm pressing on it. So this shows that the barrel floats all the way from the receiver up to where those rubber O-rings were inserted. The wood does not touch the steel. I don't like the cleaning rod to rattle while I'm shooting, so I put a small rubber O-ring that's just the right size to slip over top of the cleaning rod. So I put the cleaning rod in, and then I bend it outwards a little bit and push the O-ring down, and now the cleaning rod doesn't rattle anymore. And I'm not 100% sure at this point, but I think having this O-ring and this preventing this ramrod from rattling actually makes the rifle more accurate. Something else, I'm not sure yet, but we're going to find out at the range today, is that I believe you don't want to slam this bolt shut. You actually want to close the bolt and open it just a tiny amount so that the handle is loose, and I'll explain why in a second. So I'm taking the bolt apart right now, and this piece of the bolt actually is supposed to be the piece that takes the load when the bullet goes off. The rim of the bullet will push on this piece, and these lugs catch on the inside of the receiver and prevent this piece from going back, which means you want these lugs to be squarely engaged with the inside of the barrel when you pull the trigger. If you slam the bolt shut really hard, you want to get it closed, but when the bolt handle hits the receiver, if you keep pushing down, that means this end of the bolt goes up. When this end of the bolt goes up, it's going to push on this piece of the bolt here, and it's going to go up. So it's going to be sitting sideways in the barrel of the gun when you pull the trigger. When the bullet goes off, it's going to push back on this bolt piece, and it's going to snap it down straight. But when it snaps it, it's going to put a little vibration down the barrel of the gun, and it will make the bullets shoot up and down in a line. Won't affect it left and right, but it will up and down. So now we're going to go to the range and try this thing out. We're going to bring along a 22. I found having a 22 caliber rifle along helps improve accuracy, which you're like, you're nuts, how can having two guns improve accuracy? The reason is nothing decreases the accuracy of this rifle more than getting the barrel hot. So the idea is to take a shot with this rifle, put it on the rack, and while it's cooling, pop off a clip of 22 caliber bullets. When you're done with that, the barrel will be cool enough for the next shot. This is at 50 yards using 180 grain Winchester soft points, and I took 6 shots, and two of the shots must have went through the same hole because there's only 5 on the target that you can see, but this one's just a little bit oval shaped. So we've got maybe an 1.25 inch windage and just over an inch elevation. So that works out to 2 MOA elevation and a 2.5 inches windage, which is really good at 100 yards. And because this time I was not slamming the bolt shut so hard, but just gently closing the bolt and taking just a little bit of the tension off, this is the best this rifle has ever shot in elevation. Other days I've been out here, I get the same spread left and right, but they'll fly up and down, and I'll have a line up and down on the paper, but not today. So I think not slamming the bolt shut is a definite improvement.